My name is Jennifer Scott. My day job is I am the executive director and chief curator of something called the Urban Civil Rights Museum in Harlem, which is a brand new history museum that's coming to our beloved city of New York. Thank you. Very soon, maybe next year, started by the National Urban League, it will focus on the story of civil rights, particularly in northern urban city centers. So we're pretty excited about that. And I'm here today in my role as a board member for Museum Hue in celebration of 10 years. I have the distinct honor of introducing our keynote speakers, who are all fantastic. I'll start with Erin Harkey to the far left. Yes. Erin is actually originally, we were just talking about before, originally California, as am I. As is Sonya, but we did not meet in California. We met in Chicago because she was part of the City of Chicago team that appointed me as a co-chair of one of the Chicago Monuments Project, which I think, speaking of diversity, is one of the best monument projects in the country, thanks to Erin's leadership and guidance, if you want to learn all about that. So Erin has over 20 years of experience helping individuals and communities succeed through the arts. She's currently the CEO of Americans for the Arts. She was the commissioner of the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, known as DCASE. She served the city of Chicago as projects administrator, then deputy commissioner for programming, and first deputy commissioner. In her dual role as senior policy advisor for arts and culture in the mayor's office, she advised on cultural policy and arts strategy across all city departments and agencies. She previously managed public art programs at the Los Angeles County Arts Commission and the Arts Council for Long Beach. Erin holds 2 master's degrees in public art administration and urban planning from the University of Southern California, USC, and a bachelor's degree in marketing from Howard University. Yes. Our next speaker, Sonya Childress, also Californian originally. And Sonya, when they asked me to introduce you, they asked me how I knew you, and I had to think, was there ever a time I did not know Sonya? She's been a part of our California family for a long time. We have tons of mutual friends and family members. She's like a colleague and a sister. Sonya is the co-founder and co-executive director of the Color of Congress. The Color of Congress is an ecosystem builder that resources, supports, and connects organizations led by people of color that serve nonfiction, filmmakers, leaders, and audiences of colors across the U.S. and U.S. islands with Sahar Driver. As senior fellow with the Perspective Fund, she examined issues of ethics, equity, and accountability in the documentary field. A veteran strategist, she spent 2 decades devising impact campaigns and distribution strategies at Active Voice, California Newsreel, and Firelight Media, where she piloted a fellowship for impact producers of color. She is a board member of the Center for Cultural Power, a member of the Documentary Accountability Working Group, a working group member for the Lens Reflected study, a 2015 Rockwood Just Films Fellow, a recipient of the 2022 Leading Light Award from Doc NYC, and a member of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. And of course, last but not least, who you sort of met already, Stephanie Johnson-Cunningham, who is the co-founder and the executive director of Museum Hue, who we are celebrating today. Under her leadership, the organization launched Hue Arts New York, the only statewide effort to amplify the needs and impact of arts entities founded and led by Black, Indigenous, Latino, Asian, and all people of color across the state. She has been on the forefront of developing invaluable resources that deepens public knowledge and understanding of these arts entities. Her leadership has also propelled the organization into a nationally recognized and trusted source with museums and academic institutions that utilize Museum Hue to learn more about the arts field. Stephanie holds a bachelor's degree in art and art history from Brooklyn College and a master's degree in cultural heritage and preservation studies from Rutgers University. She has also received the Americans for the Arts American Express Emerging Leader Award for her contributions to arts equity in the field. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speakers.
Thank you, thank you. So we'll kick off this conversation by getting to know our amazing speakers. Let's start with your why. What inspires you and keeps you going?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess community inspires me, and people inspire me, and art inspires me, and all of those things all together, right, are the most inspirational. So I've spent, I think, the majority of my career working in local governments and really closely with people and organizations and artists. And I feel the most, I think, power when I am in community and seeing how folks are organizing and making good things happen.
So lovely to be with you both today, and all of you. Thanks for coming out. Same. I'm inspired by community. I live in Long Beach now, but LA just went through a horrible fire season, and Altadena community got hit hard. I used to live in Altadena, grew up there as well, and Altadena showed up for itself in ways that were like, there was a muscle that was flexed after George Floyd was murdered and people came and showed up for one another. There was a muscle that was flexed during the pandemic where people created mutual aid and showed up for each other, and then that muscle got stronger after the fire. I don't always want us to be flexing our muscles in moments of crisis, but there was so much beauty in how community showed up. Art is woven into that because art is so care-filled. So the way that we show up for one another, whether it's through mutual aid or arts, is always what inspires me.
And how does your why connect to your organizations and your work?
Well, how many of you are familiar with Americans for the Arts? Quick poll. Oh, okay, cool.
Almost half.
Okay, that's pretty good. So for those of you that don't know, Americans for the Arts is, I think, the only non-discipline specific, non-geographic specific arts advocacy organization in the country, which makes us, I think, by default, probably the largest. But historically, the organization has evolved, and a big part of the work, and actually how I came to be associated with the organization as a young arts administrator, was in their work with local arts agencies. So a lot of the historic work of Americans for the Arts has been in providing resources to agencies that are working at the sort of local and community level. And that's something that we're, I think, going to be reinvesting in, I think, strongly. And we'll get into this probably a little bit more later, but as things at the federal level become unstable, which is probably a generous word, what we do to fortify local investment in the arts is probably the most important thing that we can do. So that's my connection.
My why and my work. So Color Congress, I work in the documentary field. I was telling Erin I'm a doc nerd, and I've been working in the doc field for 25 or so years, but I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm like a Kubrick zirconia. I'm like a designer imposter.
You're a curator.
I'm a curator.
Yes.
I'm a cheerleader of doc filmmakers because I think they have superpowers, and so I've been working in this field for a really long time. Never making films, always connecting films to social justice movements on the strategy end, because I love working and living at the intersection of art and organizing. That's where I feel most comfortable, is when I have the hand of an artist and the hand of an organizer, and I get to bring them together in some ways. And sometimes translate the various languages that they speak, since not always speaking the same language and terminology. So Color Congress, our organization, does a lot of that work too. We support 120 people of color-led documentary organizations across the country. So we don't support filmmakers ourselves. We support the organizations that make filmmaking possible as an art form for people of color. These are film festivals and artist support organizations and collectives and funders and exhibitors that fund work and train filmmakers and create community, and then bring that work to diverse audiences. And what I love about the work, because I'm not working with films or filmmakers anymore, but with organizational leaders, is that it's a really diverse room of folks. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a solidarity project. These are leaders of color who may have found themselves competitive with one another for funding for their individual organizations. And in this space that we create and bring them all together, we ask them to leave that at the door and to look at each other as kin and to build community with one another. And to, if these leaders can build community with one another, then their communities can connect, and then our stories can connect, and we can braid our stories in with one another. And so that kind of community building is kind of my why, and that's, I think, how it connects to our work.
Something that you said made me think about the organizations that we run and their histories. Color Congress has been around for 4 to 5 years now, 4 years. And Americans for the Arts, 65 years, and Museum Hue, 10 years. Can we talk about what grounds your work, even as the organization evolves, but even as things around the organization evolves? Like, what grounds your work? Because again, you talked about the federal cut happening, you talked about competitive funding or, fundraising. What grounds your work even as these things evolve?
I think I'm a collaborator, and so I think I'll give a little background. So AFTA has gone through a lot in the past 5 or 6 years in terms of leadership changes, sort of changes in organizational structure, loss of staff. There's been a considerable amount of, I think, infrastructure changes that have happened to the organization. And I think some trust rebuilding that the organization needs to do. And coming into this job, I think I had my own skepticism of the organization. I had my own, healthy criticism of what the organization was doing, wasn't doing, should be doing. So, I came into this job with that, sort of perspective. And I think what has been, helpful for me, and I think also for, extending myself out to the community, is both, I think, my record and my honest and sincere desire to be a collaborator and to be a partner. AFTA is a resourced organization, but I have no desire to lead in every situation. In some situations, we are in front leading. In some situations, we're behind. In some situations, we're on the side. In some situations, we're silent. It's not our business, right? And so I think the opportunity for honest collaboration, for sharing, for mutual respect, mutual opportunity, are just things that I try to really seek and sort of demonstrate in how I move through the world in general, but certainly how I move through my career.
Yeah, I mean, we're the baby on the stage. Color Congress is just starting our fourth year. We're brand new, and I co-directed and co-founded it with a colleague, Sahar Driver. We're similar. We're new EDs, we're co-EDs, and we're program people. We're both came into this work as not filmmakers and strategists. So to lead an organization of leaders of film organizations, when we're not filmmakers, the majority of the directors of our organizations self-identify mostly as women, all women of color, and mostly as filmmakers. So these are folks who are artists, and who created a nonprofit organization that they wished they had for their own creative career. The film festival that would have put their film on, the funder that would have funded their work, the collective that would have made that room easier to walk into. And so these are mostly women of color leaders, filmmakers who are now, many of them have day jobs. The organization they're in, our membership organization with, is a passion project, and then they're also trying to make film. So we're not leading them. They don't need leadership from us, but we provide a space where we resource and support and connect them with one another. But I think what we all have in common is that we all believe that documentary form is an incredible canvas for a lot of different impulses. It's an incredible canvas for us to reinsert ourselves in history and to tell our own history. It's an incredible canvas for to document what's happening in our world today, whether that's right outside of your window or across the world. It's an incredible canvas for personal introspection. I came into this work as a baby, young person at Berkeley, a student who got just like my mind blown by Marlon Riggs's work. Does anyone know Marlon Riggs, the filmmaker? He was teaching on campus while I was an undergrad there, and his films like Ethnic Notions and Color Adjustment and Black Is, Black Ain't, all of these films were being taught in all of my classes. And I was like, who is this man? They're like, he teaches in the journalism school department. And his work recalibrated what I thought documentary films were. They were not the things that I fell asleep to in the 5th grade. They were like waking me all the way up. And they were personal, and they were political, and they were commentary, and they were history. And I just was like, I don't think I can make that, but I want to help whoever the hell wants to make those, and I'll make that my life's work. And I think everyone in Color Congress, all the leaders, are either making that kind of work themselves or making it easier for people of color to make that work and for that work to be seen. And we all share a belief that documentary film is an important art form, and that we need access to it. And I think the other thing that grounds me as that things change and funding changes and chaos emanates from DC and in other global contexts is, again, at the end of the day, it's a solidarity project. So I'm like a doc film nerd, but if these were heads of dance organizations, I would be just as excited to wake up every day and organize them and get them together in a room to build solidarity. So it happens to be in the doc sector, but as a solidarity project, I think that's what grounds our work.
And so how would you describe this moment we're in politically, culturally, and creatively?
Tomfoolery.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That works. Well, I mean, it's a little bit of a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, culturally, I have a lot of faith and optimism in who we are as a cultural community. I'm not worried about our ability to navigate. I do, like all of us, pray and wish for a time when we're not in, perpetual survival mode, where it's not about, survival, but it's about thriving and abundance and all of those things. I hope for that time, but that is not the time that we are in. But yeah, I think coming into, the process, so I've been in this job for two and a half months, so it's been a lot. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and people were like, how, this has been such a roller coaster. And I was like, a roller coaster, there aren't a lot of highs. This is like more like a steep slide into the abyss. But I think I anticipated as I was pondering this job, the interview process was very long. And in the middle of the interview process, an election happened. And so I had to process the prospect of this job, knowing what I knew and what we anticipated would happen. I knew it was going to be a challenge. I knew that we were going to be up against things that were going to be pretty formidable. The speed of which it has happened is something altogether different. Speed and scale, right, is something altogether different. And I think the fact, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's not just the arts. It's not like the arts are being targeted, but it's really everything. It's a full-scale collapse. And so trying to figure out the arts, but also art's relationship to all of these other things makes it even more complicated. It makes it complicated for conversations with philanthropy that are, trying to plug gaps in sort of multiple sectors. It makes it difficult to, in advocacy, to position yourselves when there's an extreme job loss and all kinds of chaos in lots of different areas. So yeah, it's an extremely, there's not even the right words for, we have not found, I think, the language to be able to, I don't have the language, I think, to fully articulate how significant this moment is.
Yeah, I mean, this country has never been a picnic, but we've never known a slide into autocracy and sort of judicial autocracy, and I think what's interesting about this time, what's sort of shocking about this time is like Erin, you're saying, it's a kind of a dismantling with a real. It's not surgical. Usually, there's a surgical precision in how communities of color, marginalized communities, have been targeted in this country, or carved out of citizenship, or carved out of rights, and this is like a blunt instrument hitting lots of communities at the same time, and chaotically, messily, and not surgically, not like, we don't love surgical racism, but at least there's going to be some shape to it, and now it's just like, and so I think in that chaos, and what we're seeing is just dismantling of entire infrastructures and systems that are going to be hard to be built back. And that's what's unique about what we're seeing. Other countries are going through their own slide into autocracy, and ours is looking so different because it's so chaotic and it's so widespread. And it's not. It's a kind of a wealth power grab. It's not like all ideological. Some of it is, and some of it is just about an oligarchy takeover, and a technocrat take. I mean, it's just so different and interesting and hard to get my head around. But I've been thinking, and I was with some organizers this week, and one frame for this moment that was helpful for me to think was Ai-jen Poo, who runs a national domestic worker alliance, was talking this week about a framework that helps her think through this moment, in that there are three, can I say it? There are three Earths, is how she laid out. And she said there is Earth 1, and Earth 1 was the world in which we lived, where we understood the laws, and we understood the rules of systems and institutions. We understood how they operated. We understood how to take power where we were powerless. We understood how to navigate the laws and the rules and the systems of this country. And that was Earth 1. We organized well in Earth 1. We didn't always win, but we knew how to navigate Earth 1. Then there's Earth 2, which is the world we're in now, where everything is different. The normal pathways to power are different. The laws are not being respected. Institutions are being dismantled. Systems are being undermined and undercut, which means that all the ways in which we used to advocate or agitate or build power or challenge power or take power in these systems and structures are not necessarily going to work because they're dismantling them all around us. And so it's chaos is where we're kind of operating, and that's Earth 2. And then there's Earth 3, which is the world that hasn't been created yet. And we are either building a better Earth 3 or we're going to inherit a stronger version of Earth 2 that we're in now. And so what she was, another way to think about this, the way organizers think, is that there's 3 options now, which is defend the world that once was, defend, block, and that is blocking what's happening now, or build. And defend is kind of done because that world, Earth 1, is kind of over. And now either our attention and energy is in blocking what is happening right now, or our attention and energy is building the next thing so that we're not inheriting a better version of this kind of nightmarish situation now. So that's helpful to kind of defend, block, build, or Earth 1, Earth 2, or 3, whatever way your mind thinks. It's helpful to kind of think about ourselves in this moment, that there's an opportunity here to build a better version that's care-centered, that's caring for all living beings and this earth, where justice is a norm, where the arts are thriving, where people have what they need to live well, that we can build that now, but we have to be building it now, and that we're also going to be tied or pulled into blocking what's happening now, and it's hard to do both. And we're not all built for both. And some of us might be builders and some of us might be blockers. But defending the old world may not be anyone's task anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
If I can interject here and maybe talk about how we've been trying to block some of the things happening. Some of you may have read my letter talking about how Museum Hue lost federal funding. We received over $500,000 from the Institute of Museum, Library, and Services, as well as an additional about $75,000 from National Endowment for the Arts. And middle of the night, literally receiving a letter saying that our grant was terminated. And so we had to appeal and say that, the removal of our grant was wrong and unfounded. And so we received a letter just a few days ago saying that our grant has been reinstated. But what I learned during that time is that it caused so much chaos and distraction focusing on this thing. We had gone through the middle of the IMLS grant, so we spent about half, $250,000. So to imagine losing half of those funds when plans were already in effect, we were doing all the work, all the things, and then for us to get that letter in the middle of the night was so traumatizing and so troubling. If you have a federal grant, you'll know how much it takes to get that federal grant. So for this administration to say, oh, this work that you're doing is not important, it is not, anything. The email said something about doesn't contribute to, the focus of this country is so silly. Because if you know the program officers, you know the offices that are doing this work, you have incredible people who are looking tooth and nail at every application, having conversations with them. And again, I'm not saying that the, funding system is ideal, but what I'm saying is that it was a system that you had to work really hard to get into. Museum Hue, out of the cohort that received funding from IMLS a year ago or so when I received it, I believe was the only one or two organizations of color to even get this kind of funding. It is majority, larger, more predominantly white institutions. So for us to be targeted, it was so clear. It was so clear. And the work that we're doing is looking at the history of museums founded by people of color, Black, Indigenous, Asian, Latinx, all across the country. As a museum professional, we thought that this work was really important so that people can learn more about the history of these institutions, because they don't get the visibility that many museums that we know, even here in New York City, that get the full support that, we see in marketing, that we're introduced, going to public school here in New York City. We're introduced to the Met and the Guggenheim and all those institutions as kids, but not, El Museo del Barrio, not Studio Museum, not these other institutions. And so, uplifting the work of these institutions was crucial. So it took a lot of time and energy for us to be able to navigate receiving our funding in the first place, and then to now appeal to receive our funding again was so chaotic. But we decided that we were going to fight for this funding. Thank you. So we were blocking. Yes. So, but one thing that I'll say to that is, in my team, we've been talking a lot about, are we going to apply for federal funding ever again? And we don't know, because it just was very, very frustrating. Again, maybe when that wears off, we're like, yeah, we're gonna apply again. But right now, we're just, really frustrated, but also thinking about how we can come together and do more. Was it you I was talking about Susu with? Yeah, how we can come together and fund each other, right? And do more earned income, and not fully leaning and depending on these grants for our work. We can be more of a collective fundraising, and seeing how possible that is as well. So thank you so much for that. I think also with that, what's an initiative you're leading or considering that feels necessary? What initiatives you see others doing and want to shout out?
Well, to me, one of the sort of powers that Americans for the Arts has is in our sort of research capacity and our data capacity. And when all of this started to happen, we started to track as best we could what the impact of all of this was going to be. And we're actually going to be bringing together a few arts researchers in the next couple of weeks to just talk about what we know, what we don't know, and also to think about sort of charting a more, I think, equitable and fair strategy around arts research and data, especially in a time, I think, with the instability of the federal government, sort of attack on higher education, that our ability to do research in a significant way also might be sort of in question. So, when you said something about, I think one of the things that I think we need to track going forward is as these agencies continue in whatever capacity that they continue, we need to still hold them accountable for how those dollars are being spent. So I think the ability to continue to analyze and be able to really interrogate the health of the system in this time is going to be something that's super, super, super important. But in a way that people can participate. I think data can be intimidating. People get really angry when they have to fill out another survey and do all of that kind of thing. But the other thing that I was with some leaders in the New York arts community that I think is also important, and the thing that gives me is another sort of data point, is the storytelling that needs to be done in this moment, which I think is, maybe something we have in common. Because storytelling is its own data point. And what we need to do more than anything is to tell our stories, tell what's happening to people in this moment, happening to communities, but also communicate our value above all of that too. So it's not just about the sorrow, it's about the joy. And so, when I'm around people that are, really hyper-focused on the storytelling aspect of this, I get really excited.
Sonya?
Yeah, I agree about that. We have to both tell the story of this moment and also tell the story of the impact of this work. Audiences are voters, and we don't engage audiences as voters, but audiences are voters who can demand that this government invest in the arts on our behalf, right? But we have to tell the story about how arts enriches all of our lives, and so that audiences as voters can advocate. But one project that Color Congress is doing right now is a project that the members themselves voted on and directed, a fund that we have for our it's a free membership program for organizations, and they have a pot of money every year that we hand to our members and say, how would you like to direct this money towards your collective needs or your collective ambitions? The only thing we tell you is that you have to decide on it as a group. So every year our members will go through a months-long process to decide what they want to do with the pot of money that they get. And our members decided that they wanted to address distribution, which is a problem for film. It's hard for independent films to reach audiences. A lot of people are trying to fix film distribution in this country. It didn't always serve us in the past, the pathways, but our members wanted to address that, and instead of just creating a new streaming platform for POC film, they decided there's actually plenty of places where films can be seen, but audiences don't necessarily know how to find all that work. And so that's a marketing problem, not a distribution problem. So what we're doing is a series of 8 marketing experiments over the course of this year, around a couple of dozen documentary films that were all nominated by member organizations. And what we're trying to do is test different ways in which we can create new pathways to bring films to diverse audiences, whether that's online or in person, whether that's using digital strategies like influencers, or getting stuff on Meta platforms or YouTube, or doing community screenings. We're finding that censorship is a big problem. Censorship on commercial platforms. Films about, obviously the young lords are getting censored off of platforms like Instagram. So what is considered political content now changes every week. So the commercial platforms are tied to us, and they're not always our friends, and they're really susceptible now to aligning themselves with this administration. But nonetheless, we're doing a lot of testing, and the one experiment that I'm most excited about is a series of short films called Resistance and Joy, and these are short documentary films that are put in a block together. They're about different communities, identity communities, different regions, and we're offering that block of films for free for any of our member organizations or any organizations to screen them. And what's happening essentially is that we're trying to activate all of our member organizations that have screens like this in community and can bring work to community. And this is the first time many of our member organizations, some of which are identity-based, like an Asian American Film Festival, that's showing Latino films in their festival because they're taking all of the films that we're offering them. So they're showing African American films about roller skating in Kentucky. They're showing films about Gaza. They're showing, and so we're asking all of our members, take each other's work and share that work, and then bring those films to your community. And what we're trying to do is then activate this network of screens all over the country. And that network is, in a way, trying to make visible a kind of green book for cinema. Do you all know the green book? So if we could activate and make visible that there are screens where independent, powerful filmmaking can be seen in community, and it's not Netflix, which is censoring anything that isn't celebrity or true crime if it's a documentary. It's not Instagram, which is censoring our stories off because it's saying it's political content. It's in community. And that this green book can now be a way where you can find out, if I want to see something that reflects me and my world, or reflects a world I want to learn more about, I can find these screens and these places where this work can be seen. So we're trying to just kind of experiment and activate things on a grassroots level, and I'm excited about that.
Awesome. That brings me to my next question. What does abundance in arts and culture look like and feel like to you?
I think one of the things that happened, so in my mind, there's a lot of parallels because I was heading the cultural affairs department in Chicago when COVID happened. And we, came together to, set up these relief funds. We all knew what our jobs were. We got together, we organized, we made things happen, we took care of our communities. But the thing that was apparent to us within the systems that we were creating is that the entire arts and culture infrastructure is based on relationships to nonprofit arts organizations, and the structure is not set up to actually protect and care for people. And we didn't change, it's been crisis on top of crisis, but we haven't made a lot of progress, I think, in really creating an arts and culture system that is individual and human-centered. So as I think about abundance, to me, it would be a system in which funding, support, care, was really designed to support the needs of artists and creative workers first and foremost. And that the organizations we work for, right, organizations are just, housing for people, right, then benefited from the stability, the health, the care of the worker. And so I think abundance to me means reimagining the system of care and support that the arts are entirely sort of built upon, and reimagining it as a more sort of human-centered system.
I love that.
Yeah, same. Artists are workers, and in a perfect world, we'd be much more closely aligned and supporting a worker movement in this country, a labor movement. And if we think about artists as first responders, cultural workers are caregivers, a different kind of care. They're well-being workers, but they're workers, and they should be compensated for their work so that they can make a living enriching our lives with their creativity and their artistry. And but if we're advocating for that, we have to advocate for all workers. That's the person at the checkout counter. We have to say we don't want every checkout automated because that's somebody's job that's now gone away. And so I guess when I think about sustainable careers for artists and well-being for artists so that they can continue to contribute, I feel like it's what I want of all people. And then I want the artist community to be knitted more closely into the labor movement because then all boats can rise. So that's where I see some abundance.
Beautiful. Now we're going to wrap. Is there a quote, a mantra, a song, a place that you keep coming back to right now, and why?
I don't. My dad always told me when I was growing up, and I think this was something that his dad told him: "To whom much is given, much is required." So that that's sort of my what I live by. So I feel very blessed to be. It's a tough job, but I feel really honored to be in a position and to have resources to be able to help folks, or to be able to help chart what's next and to support my community. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'm thinking a lot about Octavia Butler these days, and she wrote "I write to create myself," and Maxine Hong Kingston also has a line about in times of destruction we must create, whether that's a poem or a parade or a circus or a school or a vow. Or a moment of peace. She has a beautiful quote about that. So thank goodness for the writers for giving us language that we need right now to imagine Earth 3. But I write to create myself is one of my favorites.
Love that. For me, it's Bob Marley. Quite frankly, put on some Bob, gets me going. All the tunes from Bob gets me going. So especially now in these days, thinking critically about, the sun is shining, just like all of the goodness, just having it flow. Because I'm telling you, seriously, the last few months with this new administration had me bugging for a while.
Aged you.
For a while. And then finally, it just came off of me. And so, Bob was a large part of that. So thank you both so much. I'm so incredibly grateful for both of you, your brilliance. Thank you both so very much. From a Brooklyn girl to Cali girls. Thank you all.